On today's Monday news recap, we are discussing that old series that happened in Seoul, getting overshadowed by Shohei Ohtani and all that weird stuff, as well as talking a little bit about Blake Snell signing with the Giants, a celebration of Peter Seidler's life, as well as answering some of your listener questions and comments. As always, let's get into it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres Podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Monday, March 25th. As always, I am your host with sometimes occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You might be familiar with my baseball-related work over at the website Just Baseball, where you can check out my Padres 2024 season preview if you are a fan of the written word, as well as just general fun stuff over there, as well as a new show that I have coming out this week that we will talk more about, or at least just I'll mention it on this podcast. It is Locked On we're talking about here, not just baseball. So stay tuned for that. Follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, Javiipeno for more, or just at @LO_Padres. Either account. I'm going to be using my own personal account a little bit more, though, I think. Especially in the opening weeks and whatnot. But we'll see. We'll see. And then you can also check out on YouTube, Locked On Padres, where you can check out whatever shirt I'm rocking, whatever do I've got, and certainly say hi to Tatis and Pac-Man, who are always there. Today's episode, guys, we are going to be doing, as usual, a Monday news kind of recap. There wasn't too much news this weekend concerning just the Padres, but still, we're pushing through, and as well as going over some of your listener questions. Some of them I really enjoyed, and a lot of comments were about my hair, hilariously enough. So shouts to all of you out there that were sending kind words about the haircut that I didn't even really acknowledge when I recorded on Friday, which was weird, especially for me. Let's get into it, guys. Let's get into it. By saying first, you need to go check out FanDuel. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, guys. Make every moment more. New customers, join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your $5 bet wins. Simple as that, guys. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, let's get rolling. First news that I want to discuss is, look, it came out yesterday, by the time you're watching this, that Shohei Ohtani will be, addressing the media. Dave Roberts, at the time that I am recording this video for you, is addressing the media as we speak. And no, I didn't feel like waiting because it's still just a Dodgers story. And Ohtani will be speaking today when you're listening to this episode. Look, I will say that the jokes are funny. I've really enjoyed the Padres Twitter jokes. Anyone who's rooting for Ohtani's downfall is just boring, in my opinion, and that goes for Padres fans. That could be very well listeners of this podcast or viewers of this podcast. I just don't. This guy's the most exciting person in the league that they've ever had, arguably. And then you've got other talent. Obviously, we have the second most exciting player in the league in Tatis. But I just think that rooting for his downfall is lame. I will say it is funny seeing Dodger fans freak out and lose their minds. And I did enjoy seeing some people who immediately were trying to downplay it. And I don't know what to make of it. Again, I don't know what to make of it, but I did find it funny that Jeff Snyder of Locked On Dodgers is just look, trying to outweigh it. Here's what happened in the end. This is what probably happened. It's well, you don't know. You know what I mean? No one really knows. I'm not saying Ohtani's a gambler. I'm not saying anything like that. My uneducated opinion, just based on a citizen of the world and what I've seen that people do, especially when it comes to gambling and whatnot, is that Ohtani might have done something. I don't think that it's very hard for me to believe that just because he doesn't speak a fluent English, that he wouldn't just know that someone had all this money and whatnot taken from him. So that's something to monitor. I don't think it's going to affect the regular season, really. I think people have already said that there's no way that Ohtani is not going to be on the active roster. So I doubt that. It would obviously be a giant scandal if this were to occur. And it does suggest, a little bit of the dangers potentially of an increased presence of gambling, I think, when it's being shown all the time. I know that's been a discourse too, one that I personally agree with a little bit. When it goes unchecked, I think some people have a little bit of an issue with that. But again, we don't know. We're going to have to wait for more information, and we're going to have to wait on the whole gambling thing for years and now to see how it evolves or lack thereof or doesn't, right? So there's a lot of different pieces to this thing. But, hey, the Padres did beat them one of the two games, and that was super fun. So shouts to the Padres. Of course, you can go check out my game recaps on both Thursday and Friday on this channel or in your podcast feed. Gave my thoughts on that. go check that out. It was really fun. I really did enjoy it. I think that the Ohtani drama is unfortunately overshadowing that whole series. In my opinion, a really fun first 2-game set to start off the MLB season, other than the fact that I don't know if it was all that right to have 2 West Coast teams have to wake up to see their team at 3 a.m. I don't understand why you wanted to cannibalize one fan base in favor of an increased international audience. I just feel like you could have done that differently. But alas, that is what happened. And it was a fun series. Again, we hit the crap out of them in that second game. Although it was scary. And I did get some comments saying, oh, they should have put in Michael King instead of Johnny Brito. That was a dumb decision. Hey, it's early. We got a lot of time left. But man, what a moment that was. More in news, though. Aside from the Ohtani drama, Blake Snell signed with the Giants. Boom. That's the story. Talked about this very briefly on Friday, so I'm going to talk about it a little bit more now. I don't think that it's a good thing that there are only like 4 teams apparently that will spend in Major League Baseball. I think that this offseason was indicative of some of the problems with the sport, even if it was the problem with the sport, but to the upteenth degree, because the Dodgers, of course, famously spent like $1.7 billion. It's not like they do that every offseason, but even still, it serves as a reminder of what I think is one of the problems with this sport that we get into, where you just have, it's rich get richer, poor get poorer, or poor stay the same, whatever you want to view it, which is why I think that the Padres genuinely are like the heroes of baseball. And yes, I know that makes me biased, but I think them and the Mets, and especially the Padres, because the Padres have never historically spent, so I think it's great for them. And it's great for the league to show that, and it's good for the league if a team like that succeeds. I really do believe that, like, absent of my Padres fandom and hosting this show and covering the team, I wholeheartedly believe that it is good for the sport. The same way the Rangers, who had like the worst record in baseball the last 3 years, spent a heck ton of money, had some prospects come up too, and then what happens? Corey Seager's hitting game-tying home runs in the World Series, and then they literally win a championship. And I promise you that more people are going to get on them for being potentially taking a step back this year if Seager or Simeon or some of their big contracts like start to age out. You know, if they got Max Scherzer on their team right now, Jacob deGrom is another one. And then everyone's going to ignore that. It's like, well, the Brewers, Guardians, and Rays that baseball media loves to cherish and praise all the time have not won a World Series in forever. So just keep that in mind. But anyway, I got a little bit off track there. But Blake Snell going to the Giants, it's unfortunate that's a division rival. I'm not looking forward to that. I will say, and someone commented this as well, that we're going to get into a little bit later, that Snell, he's not the type of pitcher that scares me quite as much as others when it comes to racing for the most wins. He's the type of pitcher that when he's at his best, there's few guys in the league that you'd probably rather have over him, like genuinely. I think it's like Garrett Cole, Corbin Burns, Spencer Strider. Then it starts becoming a little bit more of a conversation when you get into the other guys, when he's on. But it's also possible that Snell won't be on. For the majority of his tenure with the Padres, he was not as great. He basically had one elite season this year. And then last year, he was kind of mid for half the season. And then the first year, he was mid until basically the last month and a half when he figured things out. Now, you can maybe attribute that to Larry Rothschild, former pitching coach of the Padres, that everyone believes is terrible. Just go ask Yankees fans. Lord knows they have a lot of thoughts on that. But I think that even still, he's not the type of pitcher that I'm like freaking out about. It is unfortunate, though, that he signed with the Giants. I wish that he had signed with the Yankees or with any other team, just so we don't have to face him. Because one, I would rather face as little competition as possible because we already have the juggernaut Thanos of the Dodgers, and also because I like Blake Snell and I don't want to I'm not gonna be rooting to kill him. You know what I mean? I did tweet on Friday about how they massacred my boy seeing him in the Giants uniform, but I'm also wondering a little bit of a storyline to look out for. Bellinger and Matt Chapman, and especially Blake Snell, I'm wondering if signing this late into spring training will affect them. There's something to be said for chemistry and getting your thing going and whatnot, like getting your workload ramped up. He's not going to be one of the 3 first pitchers that the Padres face in the opening series this week. So I'm just wondering, keep an eye on that. I'm going to be curious, if Snell's bad for a longer time coming off this Cy Young. Yes, it's part of the course for Snell, who's been very, he rises in the second half. But even still, I still would keep an eye on that and be like, oh, I wonder. This might affect him. We'll see. And then maybe he'll opt in and then he'll be great next year. But that's for down the line. You know what I mean? But, folks, we still have a little bit more news to get into. But before we get into that, I just want to give a shout out again to the kind folks over at FanDuel. Look, your bracket, did it get busted because of Kentucky? Possibly. Did it get busted because of Yale beating, who was it? Auburn? That's right. I haven't been following March Madness too much. But don't worry, because with FanDuel, you can still get in the game even if your bracket's been busted. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all still. Go check that out, FanDuel.com/lockedon, and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Go check it out. As well as MLB futures. You want to throw some money on Dylan Cease, Cy Young? There's crazier things you can do out there. He's actually got pretty good odds right now. So go check that out, guys. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Go check it out. And we're back here, ladies and gentlemen, here on the Locked On Padres podcast. How many times would I say go check it out? In one ad read, if you had the over, boom, shouts to FanDuel if you had that. Continuing on with the news, though. Again, not too much. We're just going to talk about this. This is very going to be evident that I was searching for headlines, but I want to talk about this one really quickly. In quotes from Jake Cronenworth, I don't get why everybody makes it about us finishing ahead of them. There are 29 other teams in baseball. I just thought it was interesting that he kind of voiced a little bit of a pushback to the drama and the, whatever you want to call it, the narrative, the rivalry, I guess, between the Padres and Dodgers. I do think it is funny because it's like, hey, well, Cronenworth, we've seen you, like, when they beat the Dodgers, of course, famously in 2022, that Cronenworth was, like, super jazzed. He's the one that hits the go-ahead RBI. He's raising his hand. I get his point, though, and I think that there's a lot of other people that feel that way. I don't know. I'd love to hear your guys' comments and thoughts, because I feel like Cronenworth speaks for a lot of baseball fans of the, in general, like, can we not just make it about the Dodgers? Now, here's the thing. It should be, in a lot of ways, about the Dodgers. Like, in terms of who's generating the most storylines, it's the Dodgers. You know what I mean? The Mets are basically a little bit, we'll see how competitive they are. They're kind of sitting this year out because of how bad last year was. You've got the Yankees with Soto and with the Cole situation, don't get me wrong. But I just named two of the most rich teams in the sport. So I kind of understand that a lot of fans might be out there being like, man, I am so sick of hearing about the same two teams, the Yankees or the Dodgers. And then I guess the Astros would be the other one. But unfortunately, that's how it is. And then maybe the Phillies. The Phillies are in there too. But I understand there's a little bit of a frustration with that. But hey, I think this is still going to be fun. And look, Cronenworth, it's hard to not talk about the Dodgers after the offseason they had. And that's still the team that you're competing to beat against. I would still wager that the Padres have, in a lot of ways, when it comes to the rivalry that's ascended and percolated more over the past few years, I do think the Padres have a slight edge in that. But barely, and I think that's me. That's where my bias comes out. But you know me, shortened season World Series when you've blown it every single year for the past 15 years. You know, I do think that says a lot. And then again, 2017, oh, they cheated. Well, you guys lost to every other team ever. You've lost to the D-backs and you've gotten swept by them and you've gotten beat by Howie Kendrick. So who's to say you would have won that series? And then in 2022, full things down. Everybody's ready. The Padres beat them, right? And then last year, same thing. So that's just my take. Although the Dodgers overall, what I'm saying is the Dodgers are better, but when it comes to like the head-to-head stuff, it's a little bit tighter, I think. Just a little bit. What am I kidding? The Dodgers probably still have the advantage, but you get my point. But hey, Cronenworth, maybe he's speaking to, maybe he's echoing something from the team that they're a little bit tired of talking about the Dodgers. I don't know. Just a thing to keep an eye on. And maybe we're not going to see the fireworks as much. Maybe that part of the Padres and the rivalry is a little bit dead. It could be. Lord knows the Yankees-Red Sox one is dead right now. All we've got right now is Astros versus everybody and maybe Dodgers versus Padres if the fire starts coming back for that series. And I don't just mean in terms of winning. I mean in terms of like fire, like when we saw Jorge Mateo, get into a fight sort of. When Jurickson Profar was barking at Clayton Kershaw. That type of stuff, you know what I mean? But again, we'll just have to see. Last thing in terms of the news, though, that I want to quickly touch on is this weekend, easily probably the biggest news in Padres world, is the celebration of life for Peter Seidler that occurred this weekend at the stadium. There was a nice little logo that they have, like a yellow heart with the PS initials. I really appreciated that. I've done an episode on him that you can go check out after he passed, of course, this past year. I am personally, this is a Padres baseball podcast, but I'm personally very sensitive when it comes to, people passing, death, and all that stuff. Not in the sense of like it freaks me out and I can't talk about it, but more that I'm always thinking about it and I don't like tweeting and talking about it too much because I have this fear this very strong fear that I don't want to make it look like I am profiting, trying to gain clout over someone having passed. Like, I rarely do that. Unless it was someone like super that I like really, really knew, and or someone that was really important to my life, I try not to do that, like, just for a little bit of peek under the hood. Like, for me, I've only ever commented like a lot about like when Robin Williams and Mac Miller passed away. Those are two, beloved creators, artists of mine that I loved. Everyone else, I just try not to do that. I put out one tweet after Seidler had passed, and again, could I be being hypocritical here? Sure, possibly. But since I'm sure, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure that there are like bad things that I've capitalized off of and, put out a tweet on or whatnot, but this is one where I just don't like doing that. I don't want people to think that I just want to get the easy engagement. And I'm not saying that other people who tweet or talk about Seidler are. Everybody's different. Everybody processes things differently. So I just want to throw that out there that, like, if I'm not talking about Seidler a lot, it's not because I don't care. It's just that I really do, when it comes to people having passed, that is an area where I really want to be careful and don't want to look like I'm, gaining something from it, if that makes any sense. Maybe I'm being way too hard on myself here. I was told that recently by a friend that is my defining characteristic, is being hard on myself. But nonetheless, that's how I feel. But still, it was a beautiful kind of, dare I say, service in a lot of ways. I recommend going checking out Dennis Lin's kind of recap article on The Athletic about it. There's all sorts of videos. Preller had a funny story to sell. Ownership group currently had some nice words to say. And the last thing in terms of Padres news on the field stuff, I know a lot of people are freaking out that if Seidler is gone, that the team isn't going to be as inclined to go over the top and spend. I really do think that with the loan, and with a weak free agency class outside Ohtani, that it's okay to give them a little bit longer of a leash to determine whether or not that's going to be a storyline. I personally lead towards no. I think that they literally can't not try because of the Tatis, Bogarts, Machado contracts and such, which I've said before, like, they're still going to be paying like 140, 50 million and more as Tatis and Machado's contracts grow a bit in their later years. So I feel like they kind of don't have a choice, you know what I mean? So maybe they're going to try to send past this. They've got the talent. And again, bigger free agent class next year. I think that they're just being easy because, again, this is a core group of players with all the spending, with all the moves, that has never won over 89 games and has been very, like, back and forth, right? Like 2020 on top of the world, 21 in the basement, 22 just kind of like staying afloat and then on top of the world after Soto, and then 23 misery throughout. So it's been so inconsistent that I don't want to immediately jump on they're not spending thing. And also, we have proof that they kind of still do want to. Jung-Ho Lee was a target. So again, I don't agree with that sentiment that after Seidler's been gone, that means they're not going to spend. You have to wait. If next year, let's say Padres have around 155, 156, whatever you want to call it, and their number might be 200, having then at this point reset their luxury tax threshold, if they don't spend in a more stacked free agency class next year, then we can have that conversation. But until then, I would like to not. That's just me. And that about does it for the news, folks. That about does it for news. And now we're going to be responding to your questions and comments. Remember, all the time, leave your comments. I answer them. I usually check every Sunday and then occasionally Monday morning. It's just I've been busy, so I checked. I did this episode early, this mailbag early. I'll put out more calls on the YouTube or on the Twitter account for Padres questions, but usually it's YouTube comments, or if you directly DM me, I will try to answer your question, especially if you directly DM me at Javi or at @L_Padres. This is the show where I like to try and do that because it's fun. And I don't know, it's just been a fun thing to talk about news and then answer your comments, even if they're little troll crap posts. You know what I mean? I just love doing that. I think it's a lot of fun, and hopefully you guys enjoy it too. But before we get into those questions and comments, folks, before we do that, just want to take a quick second to talk about our friends over at a little company you might have heard of called Amazon. That's right, guys. Fire TV specifically is your destination for all the sports, live games, highlights, in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball, which is this week, or March Madness, they got you covered, man. They got you covered. And Fire TV recently launched their Fire TV channels. Why is that important, you may be asking? Well, It delivers a constant supply of all the latest videos from your favorite movies and brands and sports brands, all for free, including us. The Locked On channel is featured on there, most of the big leagues and pro conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports. Sports. I don't know why I said it like that. That was weird. I'm tired, guys. What do you want from me? We're right there, and I've been grinding, to get ready for opening day. Not to mention, of course, entertainment news as well. They have you covered. Travel, gaming, all that sort of stuff. They've got you covered. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should go check them out to learn more at Amazon, www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. And just like that, folks, we're back in the waning moments of Monday's episode of the Locked On Padres podcast. Let's dive right into listener questions and comments, ladies and gentlemen. Not too many this time. Don't get me wrong, not too many, but still, we got to discuss. We must discuss. We must. First of all, I want to give a shout out again, and I mentioned this at the top of the pod, to all the people that sent very kind comments regarding my hair. I genuinely had forgot to bring that up. Like, I just recorded Friday's episode and to even make a note of it. And you know me, I'm an insufferable when it comes to anything about me. I usually will reference anything that I'm wearing. I reference what shirt I'm wearing. Today's an ice cream shirt, if you're curious. It's just what I do. So shouts to all the nice comments. One of them being from my guy, Christian Muniz 3740. The biggest story should be your fresh haircut. I honestly think it brought the Padres some luck. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that very much. I got so many. One from Rama Murdy, as always. One from, let's see here. Who else was commenting? Scorn. We got Michael McGarry. We've got Joan Martle. We've got Tommy Strews, Daniel Gonzalez, Silas Robertshaw. Like, thank you so much. I know that there was some people commenting that they were like, I don't mind the hair as much as the neck beard. Agreed. I'm just really lazy, guys. For those who don't know, I'm super lazy, and I wait for my haircut to nuke the whole thing. What can I say? So thanks for everybody for the kind words. Again, mean comments are in very short supply. It's mostly nice things. But in terms of an actual question, this one comes from Kianye West. Kian Shashari, at Kian Shashari, hopefully I said that correctly, sir, on Twitter. And he says, Mailbag for Locked On Padres. What are the best and worst case scenarios for our 2024 Padres season? Great question, sir. Of course. I think the best case scenario for the Padres is like a genuine run to the NLCS. I don't know if this team has World Series vibes to it, because I think that the Braves and Dodgers, who both lost last year, and if you're like me and you just believe that like it's going to be someone new every year, that makes me think like, okay, the Dodgers or the Braves are just so stacked that like it's got to happen for them. They are both teams that have been accused of the choke thing and have not been able to sway the allegations. Let's be clear. The Braves were crying like babies after just one loss to the Phillies last year. And I'm not even kidding, like babies. You all might have been following. Go check out, I did an article actually on Just Baseball about it. The biggest whiner fan base that I've ever seen. More so than the Dodgers, by the way. I know, that sounds ridiculous, right? But no, seriously, Braves, much worse, because it was media, players, broadcasters, everybody. It was crazy. So shouts to them. So I think best case scenario, I think that they make a little bit of a run and make it to the NLCS. And I think that would be a great sign because, again, prospects are getting better. We'll have more potential money to spend off season. So, again, I think that that's really good. But also, their upside is through the roof. And I think that some of the best case scenarios is a Tatis MVP season. I could totally see that. Dylan Cease, I think, is the Padres player who is most likely to be in Cy Young contention if everything goes right. Musgrove's great, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that that makes the rest of this pitching staff look worse, but I think we've seen that Cease has Cy Young potential, more so than a Musgrove, who's just a really solid, great pitcher, and Darvish at this stage of his career especially. I think the worst case scenarios for this team is that all of their depth pieces, or at least a majority of their depth, young, wild card X factors don't work. I'm talking from Robert Suarez, that he doesn't find his velocity, or not velocity, his strikeout stuff, that it just vanishes into thin air, right? I think that is a really bad case scenario. I think that the issue with Graham Pauley, Jackson Merrill, Adam Mazer, Jacob Marcy, all the young guys, Robbie Snelling, that if they aren't able to contribute, then it becomes a problem because the Padres team does have a little bit of holes. But I'd say especially left field, center field, there's a world in which the Padres have like the worst cumulative F4 or WAR, whichever one you want to use, among all major league teams when it comes to left field and center field. And maybe just in totality, the outfield. I'm not going to say the totality just because Tatis literally could be an 8.5 win player this year, and it wouldn't surprise me, and that might carry them a little bit. So I'm going to say left field and center field, that's the worst case scenario. So best case scenario, I really do think an NLCS bid. I think they can make a bid for that. I think they could finish second. I think they can be a really consistent team for a lot of this year. And hopefully they still have like really good ammo in the chamber. But my fear would be underperforming team like last year. And then because it's the second year in a row, maybe Preller's a little bit more on the hot seat, new ownership and all. Then he gets really, really aggressive and like trades for Luis Robert and trades like all the remaining prospect capital or trades for Bo Bichette. Hot take, I think he's going to be available at the deadline. Players along that line of that caliber that maybe he gets desperate. That's always a bad situation to be when you're in sports. A GM that knows they have to do better or I'm out, so therefore doesn't care about the future and will mortgage the future to be good now. That's a low-key storyline I keep an eye on, but again, that's just me. In terms of more questions, though, and comments, we've got a few more, guys. Let me just make sure I get these correctly. From @Michael McGarry 5588. Musgrove will be fine. His first couple starts are always rocky, but once he gets locked in, he is one of the best in baseball. I take him over Snell any day of the week and twice on Sundays. I don't know if he's always known for having rocky starts, but he did last year. If you guys don't remember, after the injury, he did come back really poorly, and then he got lit up in Mexico City. But the fact that he's just been so consistent, he always finds a way. But I do disagree a little bit. I don't think he's always been so bad when it comes to like the start of a season. You know what I mean? I don't know if the numbers back that up, but I do remember like 2022, for example, or 21, I believe it was, that he just started like, or no, 22. I'm sorry. I'm getting my years mixed up. That he just started like absolutely on fire that season. Like he was insane in the first half that one season. So shouts to him, but we will see how that goes. I do agree with you though that I'd rather have Musgrove over Snell. But that could change. I don't know if Snell is reaching. It's not impossible, but I think that it's unlikely that Snell has reached the point in his career where this is just going to be who he is. That's totally possible. Or he's what he has been for the majority of his career, which is an inefficient pitcher that's not always available, whether due to health or a lack of innings. That's totally possible. While Musgrove, the floor is just so much higher. So I think for a Padres team like this, Musgrove's great. And who knows? Snell could have peaked last year. So I do agree with that point. Another comment, ladies and gentlemen. This one from @Cap and Rouse, I believe, is how you say it. Hopefully. I think. Yeah. If Pod's still looking for third base help, perhaps consider JD Davis. Giants did him dirty, and he could be had for cheap. The optics make the Giants look poorly to the fan base. He would have incentive to do well, especially in the first series. Farhan Zaidi looks to be on par with a used car salesman. Woo! Just a shot at Farhan Zaidi, but I will say with the moves that the Giants have been making, and I have some Giants friends who are like locked in the team, including some people who cover the Giants professionally that are like, there's bad vibes over there, and it's not because of the lazy narrative about how their city's dangerous. That's just absurd. It just isn't based in reality in a lot of ways. But the Giants have been making a lot of anti-player moves, and JD Davis is one of them. Just finding a loophole to cut this guy. That was really unfortunate. They got rid of their play-by-play or PA announcer, I should say, and that was really random and weird. Like, why'd you do that? And then the very same day they signed Snell, almost like they knew this was going to get pushback, but we got to, distract people, I guess. It feels like the Giants have a lot of bad vibes in terms of as an organization because they're not attracting free agents the same way. I don't think they're like doomed because remember they did have Carlos Correa, granted for like 2 days, but like still they were able to sway some. So I'm just saying I don't think it's a lack of good players. I think that there's just something with that organization that rubs people the wrong way. And I think that JD Davis sign, whether or not it stops them from getting the big guys, because look, big guys I imagine are like, you're going to overpay me like crazy, I'll go wherever you want. You know what I mean? Maybe some guys think that way, but we'll see. In terms of JD Davis himself, I agree. I think he's someone to keep an eye on. I think there's a world maybe if an injury were to occur. This comment was sent though before I believe the Oakland Athletics signed him, but Just want to answer it anyway, just for the fun of it. 2.2 F4 last year, 104 WRC plus. Okay player. An okay player, but I would be against it even before the A's signed it because horrendous defensively. I don't buy fully the offense. I think he's a decent offensive player, even though he only had a 104 WRC plus, but he's had a 137 before. He's hit for a modicum amount of power, 18 home runs last year, decent on base skills. Not a bad player, but in terms of the defense, negative 11 defensive runs saved last year. Strangely, 5 outs above average though. Don't fully know how to weigh that, but even before that, -1 defensive run save the year before, -3 the year before that, -7, -2, -8, -4, -9, -1. Like, he's been a minus defensively for basically the majority of his career at third base. Well, for me, I would look at it and say, I don't mind testing out a Graham Pauley, an Eggy Rosario, all those sorts of guys. Matthew Batten. I'd rather just stay in-house, frankly. That's just me. I could have been dead wrong. It doesn't matter now because it's a moot point because he's with the A's. But, that's just me. I want to try some of the young guys for once. I don't think you should be fully into, we need to know that we have starting caliber players. Well, you don't know if anyone's a starting caliber player. You know what I mean? I mean, there's some that you know, but I don't want to make assumptions that we know that Pham is going to be a 2-win player. You know what I mean? He is getting older. I don't want to make an assumption that we know anything about any of the veterans the same way you shouldn't make assumptions that we know what a young player is going to be. I feel like I'm talking in circles a little bit, so I'm just going to move on, but hopefully you understood my point. Next question and last comment. This one coming from Silas Robert Shaw 8122, who left a comment earlier. Man, I love the lack of a neck beard. Looks good. Thank you. I did kind of like the wild hair though. Aw. Well, don't worry. The wild hair will make an appearance again because that's how I am. I usually let the hair grow out until it gets a little bit ridiculous. You know what I mean? Which I think it had been before. But hey, who knows? Who knows? It's still spring training essentially. Not worried about Musgrove. It's way better than that first start in spring training. What I took away from this career series is that the Padres were 12 of 29 for a .413 average with runners in scoring position between both games. Even in the loss, they were 2 for 5. That's a huge improvement over last year if they maintain anything near that, since they finished around 230 last year with runners in scoring position. As to Snellzilla, I think it's hilarious he isn't ready to pitch. Dude was always a little behind in prep, and it feels like he took even more time off because he didn't have a contract. I don't think he will be effective until the All-Star break. Then he will probably be his usual second half Snell. I could see that. In fact, I could see in a world where the Giants, let's say Snell starts off rocky in the second half, he returns to his usual form, which we've seen is something that he's done with the Padres, and then they get Robbie Ray back. Then maybe you have the trade deadline, and maybe they make a move at the deadline. I think the Giants might be one of those teams. There's always one team every year that blows up more in the second half. Don't count out the Giants. I can actually see, we have little evidence combined with Robert's comment here, and then the thing about Robbie Ray, who is not an incredible pitcher, but as like a 4, a 3, like that's still an asset, especially for what they're going to be paying, which isn't too much. So yeah, I think that there's a chance that because of those two things that the Giants are a second half team. So watch out for them there. Maybe we kick their butts this weekend and then we're just like cheering. And then I get to text all my Giants friends about how we own you or whatever the heck, right? I'm just messing around. And also on the haircut, I will say I don't really have a bit this year, and maybe my bit should be the haircut. What I mean by that is 2020, my thing was just shouting and doing Hype Palooza. 2021, I did the Joker, which for those watching the video, yes, I still have the hat, And then in 2022, I did the Ground Ball Gremlin Hosmer stuff. And then in 2023, I did the Campuzano Hive. So maybe my bit this year should be hair stuff. I don't know. Leave a comment below if you want to see another ongoing dumb bit that I do. We'll have to see. And don't worry, I'm not getting rid of the Campuzano one. Refuse to get rid of that one. That one's just my calling card and one of the only things I've been right about since I've been hosting this podcast, frankly, when it comes to my bold predictions. And with that all said, guys, that concludes the mailbag. Remember to leave your comments below the YouTube or DM me at Javapeno or at @LO_Padres to be featured on the Monday show. Keep that in mind. And whatever it is, I don't care. I'll answer it. You can even ask me about X-Men 97. I don't care. Try to keep it baseball, but I don't care. Whatever you want to do, I'm down to talk about it, guys. With all that being said, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Again, follow me at both accounts. I've already said them plenty of times. For this week, here's the schedule. Tomorrow, we are discussing Dylan Cease, devil's advocate, right? That's what we're doing. We're giving the naysayer perspective on that trade from yours truly, my kind of vibes on it as It's easily the biggest move the Padres made this offseason in terms of acquiring someone. So we're going to be talking about that. Wednesday, we're going to be going and breaking down through Preller's history, almost to compound the Cease thing, and look at, given his trade history, how confident are you? You know what I mean? What is his kind of track record? That's just like a fun one to have right before opening day. And of course, Thursday, opening day, we will have a crossover preview between the Padres and the Giants. Ben Caspick will be on the show. We'll be breaking that series down, talking about it, nerding out about finally, full baseball and just getting into it, comparing these two teams. And then Friday will be a game recap of the Thursday game, which should be a lot of fun. Until next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My Fire Faithful homies, take care.